it's especially at times where you go, oh, you're stuck in writing, or you get stuck at a part and you just need some advice or something, and you go, no, there's a real need for this research, and then there is that story and the legacy around why this research is being conducted.
That was the voice of Ashleigh Marshall, the guest on this episode of The Knowledge Mill. I'm your host, Greg Yoakum. Ashleigh Marshall is a sport administrator, sport event professional, and qualitative researcher. Ashleigh's PhD research at the Institute for Health and Sport at Victoria University focuses on how national sporting organizations can maximize opportunities for elite women athletes who need to suddenly transition to a second career. She was awarded the Amy Gillett Foundation Research Scholarship to undertake this research. Ashleigh has a passion for research that aims to benefit the sport industry, particularly in relation to opportunities for women and girls. She's based in Brisbane, but enrolled in a university in Melbourne, so all aspects of her PhD have been completed online: coursework, meetings with supervisors, and interviews with participants. In 2022, she won Victoria University's Visualise Your Thesis competition, an international program that challenges graduate researchers to present their research in a 60-second audiovisual explainer. Ashleigh has worked at state and national sporting organizations in Australia, as well as the Federal Agency for Sport, the Australia Sports Commission. She completed her undergraduate studies, a Bachelor of Arts with honours in Sport Studies and a Bachelor of Science in Human Movement Science at the University of Queensland, but travelled to Greece for her master's degree. There, she completed a Master of Science in Olympic Studies, Olympic Education, and the Management and Organisation of Olympic Events. This degree is organized and awarded jointly by the University of Peloponnese and the International Olympic Academy, aka the IOA. The IOA premises are located in ancient Olympia, just down the road from the ancient Olympic Stadium. Ashleigh is passionate about women and girls' participation in sport. She coaches both netball and badminton to girls aged 12 to 18 and teaches swimming to children aged from 3 onwards. She likes to keep physically active herself and swims 2 kilometers most days. Ashleigh and I spoke after the final day of the 2022 conference of the Sport Management Association of Australia and New Zealand, aka SMANZ. We met for the first time only a few days before and immediately discovered we were very good at making each other laugh. Because I can't help myself, I've included an outtake of these shenanigans at the start of this episode that will surely put a smile on your face. At the time of the podcast recording, Ashleigh was a second-year PhD candidate. Presently, she's a third-year PhD candidate and is working towards submitting her thesis within the next 6 months. This episode of The Knowledge Mill was recorded on December 2nd, 2022 on the campus of Swinburne University of Technology during the 28th Annual SMANZ Conference. Show notes, including links to more information on some of the topics that Ashleigh and I discuss, can be found at theknowledgemill.com/episode 5. That's episode and the numeral 5. But you never know.
Exactly.
We're going into wild territory now.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's stop for a moment of silence.
Because this
And more in the episode
already died.
before it's even recorded.
Have you ever listened to podcasts and everyone just starts laughing?
Yeah.
So, and then you are listening, walking along by yourself,
And
laughing
you
at
start
them laughing.
laughing.
You're like, people think I'm weird now because...
I always feel bad whenever, I am doing that and I'm walking and I'm just very calm, but then they make me burst out in laughter and I'm just like in a train station just... like, I'm okay, I promise.
Okay.
Sorry, I startled
That's
you.
all right.
Okay, let's stop just for a second so there's clear air, and then I'll start. Hello, Ashleigh. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
We are here at the 2022 SMANZ Conference, the Sport Management Association of Australia and New Zealand, on the campus of Swinburne in Melbourne. And I would like to start our conversation where I always start, which is to hear your story of how you came to find yourself doing a PhD. Okay,
well, thanks, Greg, for having me. So my name is Ashleigh, and I am a PhD candidate at Victoria University. I'm 2 years in, so I just completed my mid-candidature review in September. And how I started this journey In 2022, I was actually overseas. I was meant to be working overseas for 12 months, and I'd left Australia on the 28th of January. And at that time, sounded great. I was going to be in the Solomon Islands for 12 months.
Ooh.
Yep. And then very quickly, well, we all know what happened in 2020. And exactly 8 weeks later, I was on a plane back to Australia. So I was on an Australian government contract. I had a project with the Australian Volunteers for International Development, and yeah, all looked great in January. It had taken about 6 months to get everything ready for that because we needed medical clearances and visas and things like that. So that's something I had sort of been planning since July 2019. Finally got on the plane, got to Honiara in the Solomon Islands. Was looking really great, but then yes, very quickly messages were coming through that there's these things going on in the world. And then once the Australian government put the travel restrictions up to level 4, anyone that was contracted on this program had to come back to Australia.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So then obviously had to come home, and then that was when anyone that had been overseas needed to stay in their house for 2 weeks. So I had to come back. Just had to say, Mum and Dad, I'm back. No, I haven't lived at home for 17 years, but I'm here, and I'm not leaving the house for 2 weeks. So sitting around going, okay, am I going to go back to Solomon Islands? What's happening here? And then obviously just, I was about to say kept progressing, but nothing was progressing, obviously. We weren't going back to the Solomon Islands or anything like that. So then it was like, okay, what do I do? So in 2020, obviously sport wasn't happening, especially in Australia. And I am a sport administrator, so I had been working in the industry for 15 years. And obviously there was no job prospects. All the job boards were completely empty for sport administrators. So it was like, okay, what am I going to do now? And I had, just before going to Solomon Islands, I had been thinking, what am I going to do? Like, yep, I'm going to go to the Solomon Islands for 12 months, but what am I going to do after that? And I had thought, maybe I'll start doing a PhD, that sort of thing. So I kind of had looked around at a few things, nothing in depth. I'd spoken to a few people. So then in 2022, when I was back at my parents' house, no job, no job prospects at the time, I thought, okay, maybe I'll look into this PhD scenario a bit more and bring that forward. Anyway, so what happened was I was on Twitter one day, and my now supervisor, Claire Hanlon, had actually put a tweet out saying, anyone that would be interested in undertaking a PhD, potentially got some scholarships available, contact me if you're interested. So I sent her a DM, and here we are.
Right.
Yep.
Academic Twitter.
Yep.
So can you talk a bit about the work that you're doing then within this scholarship?
Yes. So my project is called Maximising Opportunities for Elite Women Athletes Who Need to Suddenly Transition into a New Career Beyond Elite Sport. Mm-hmm. And as you just mentioned, I do have a scholarship for my project. So the scholarship is through the Amy Gillett Foundation as well as Victoria University. So the Amy Gillett Foundation is a foundation that was started after the death of Amy Gillett, who was an Australian cyclist and who passed away with, when she was training with the Australian cycling team, road cycling team, in 2005. And there was a car crash that she unfortunately passed away, and there was also 7 teammates at the time that were injured very, very badly in that crash. So after that, Amy's parents and her husband at the time, they started this foundation, which is for road safety for vulnerable road users, so cyclists, pedestrians, etc. But my research is not in road safety for vulnerable users. Vulnerable road users. My research is obviously in elite athletes, specifically women, and specifically that transition into something beyond elite sport. But especially when their athletic careers have finished earlier than they had planned, or something's happened, and just things haven't gone to plan. So what do we do now? Injury, deselection, any number of different reasons that I'm finding out. I'm actually doing interviews with retired athletes. And so that's kind of been brought about by Amy's teammates at the time because they were involved in the crash. And as I said, some really horrific injuries, and that meant that lots of rehabilitation and things, but it was just needed some support in what do we do now if we can't get back to cycling. So very grateful. I've got a scholarship to help from the Amy Gillett Foundation to get this research underway.
Yeah, excellent. And so you mentioned you're doing interviews at the moment. How far along, where are you in the PhD process?
So I am very near the end of my data collection stage. So I've currently interviewed 13 retired elite women athletes. I'm also interviewing representatives from national sporting organisations, and just to try and understand the support that those national sporting organisations provide to elite women athletes when they are in a situation where they can no longer compete for whatever reason.
Yeah, right. And so are you able to speak to your findings at all? Is there anything you can share with us in regard to what you are finding in terms of that support that's offered or maybe in some cases not offered?
Yeah, okay. I haven't analysed all of my data yet. So originally I did a document analysis. So I went through and looked for documents from national sporting organisations that outlined any support that is provided to athletes in their transition out of elite sport. I was looking specifically if there was any sort of support for women athletes, but the support is provided to all athletes. There doesn't seem to be a lot of differences at this stage.
Right.
And also I was looking if there was any differences in support between if an athlete retires, like plans their retirement, or if there's a difference between that and if retirement occurs suddenly, earlier than they expected, and that sort of thing. And at this point, there doesn't seem to be any difference, even though the research that I'm using in my literature review says that athletes that do have to retire suddenly because of an acute injury, deselection, etc., actually they they experience more crisis with that transition out of sport when their retirement has occurred suddenly.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
And there has been quite a lot of, I'm sort of across this at a high level, and I'm across it enough to know that this is a continuing problem for athletes, that there's not the support in place, there's not the post-career planning as such. In different sports, it's different levels. Are you surprised by anything that you found, or?
Not sure I would say I would be surprised. I would say that on paper, there's a lot of commitment to supporting athletes in this scenario, in this phase of their careers. But I think when you get down to it, how that support is provided, if that support is being provided, but also how that support is potentially being received and the take-up of that support, it's probably doesn't marry up together.
So is there, the onus is a bit on the athlete to take advantage of what is there? Bit of column A and a bit of column B, I would say. As I said, I've been speaking with representatives from national sporting organisations as well, and they've said one of the biggest barriers is that the connection with the athlete and, whether they want the support, whether they're connecting in with those services that are provided, whether they want those services. I mean, a lot of the people have said, no, that's fine, I don't need that support. I have other support systems, or that's just something I should naturally know how to do. But a lot of the one of the biggest barrier is that sort of uptake of support and connection in with that sort of athlete wellbeing space that's being heavily promoted at the moment. Is there maybe a little bit of on the part of the athlete, a lack of a willingness to acknowledge one day I will have to hang up the boots or hang up the helmet as it were in cycling. And so they don't want to, sort of like how people don't like to, they think it's morbid to pre-buy their grave.
Yeah.
if you see what I mean.
Yes. No, that's really interesting as well, because again, from speaking with representatives from the national sport organisations, that they've also said it's very difficult to get athletes to talk about their retirement, what they're going to do after sport. They just don't want to focus on that, even though, yes, everyone knows that that's going to happen at some point, whether it's tomorrow or whether it's in 10, 15 years' time. That is another sort of barrier, is this. Yeah, I don't want to think about that at the moment, because right now I'm doing what I need to do.
Yeah. And for elite athletes as well, anything that's not maximizing their performance is a distraction. Yeah. So that's sort of the way they're trained, is to have the tunnel vision and just... Yeah. As well, it occurs to me there's also an issue with, I'm not sure if issue is the right word. I'm not even sure if problem is the right word, but it seems like a problem that elite athletes in particular, they're often identified at a young age, maybe even before they graduate high school, and you have this one-track mind. You're very zeroed in on maximizing my performance in this one sport. You're specializing, strength and conditioning, the whole thing. And your whole life is playing this sport. And so even if you were to take advantage of structures, programs in place, like maybe even, I know in some like footy codes, they have the under-20s players have to work part-time or study part-time. You may not even know what you want to do. And even if there was an apparatus in place to help you find a job after, you haven't even thought about what you want to do.
Yep.
Yeah. How are you? We talked about before we started recording. We talked about how, unlike I would say probably most PhD students, your subject was handed to you. How has that influenced the way that you've undertaken the process?
Okay. Yeah, that's a really interesting question. Thanks, Greg. I think it's probably helped me, because I think if I got to choose and design my own sort of topic, I think I would have just spent so much time trying to work that out and going through the literature and finding where the gap in the knowledge was. I think that that would have been a really long process, and I probably would have never actually, got to the starting line.
Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah. So I think the fact that it was, advertised and things like that helped me, because, that's your project, and that's, that's what you're going to be working on. I was just given the topic though, so all the research design has been up to myself in consultation with my supervisors. Yeah. It's been interesting. Yeah, there's definitely been times where I've gone, why am I doing this? Well, I don't know about this topic, but I think I'm past that now. I think that's very much at the start of when you do your PhD. Yeah. When you're delving, you're trying to find articles going, there's actually not much information here. This is really hard to write a liturature review. But then once you get there, you go, well, that's why I'm doing the PhD.
Yeah, that's right. I'm meant to be filling this gap.
Exactly. So I'd say that's probably one of the things at the start. I was a bit, I don't know what the word, frustrated. I don't know if I was frustrated, but I was a bit like, is it this topic that I've got? Because it is about that sudden transition, not, that's the actual focus on it. As I said, there wasn't, there's articles, there's been research to show that athletes that have a sudden transition or are forced to retirement, they experience a higher crisis than athletes that have planned when they will retire. But yes, there hasn't been any research into how do we support these athletes then that, have been through this experience, or what different support do they need than the athlete that knows they're going to retire after this Olympic cycle, after this competition year, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And so because the way you were described, Claire tweeted out that she has a couple scholarships for this project. Are there a few other people doing PhDs kind of in a related way? Like, are there a couple of you working on the same kind of thing, or what's that set up like?
No, it's just the one PhD.
Okay.
So the Amy Gillett Foundation has actually provided funding for PhDs previously. I think I'm about the third student, but the other PhDs haven't been sport related. As I said, their main focus is on road safety. So they have definitely provided PhDs, but in other areas. So just me on this one, but being here at the conference, you see other people presenting their research, which is obviously not the same, but they have elements. So there's the rise in professionalisation of sport for women as well. So I've made a few connections there, people I need to chat with further. And then that athlete wellbeing and retirement, that transition stage as well. So
nice one. That's the value of a conference like this. Hey, and it's also dangerous because you start seeing elements of your research in a lot of different places, and then you're right back in that trap of being in the literature and it never ends. And
that's right. And I was in one earlier, and their references from this year, and I thought, I haven't seen that. I've got to go and find that reference now because I need that in my literature review as well. So
right. Yeah, that's what I like about a conference is that you often see people talking about research that they know is coming, like it's maybe just finished peer review or whatever, but you get all the goss on it before it actually comes out in the journal maybe 6 months from now, and you can incorporate it and be ahead of the curve.
Yep.
Yeah. I'd be interested to know, because you said you were working in industry before you started the PhD.
Yep.
Now that you are into it as deeply as you are you feeling any motivations to maybe go the academic route, or are you treating this kind of like a job for now and see where you are?
Great question again. Because I don't really know what I want to do in a couple of years' time when I'm finished. And the irony is that my PhD is in that transition into what's next.
That's right. That's right. You should be expert on this.
I know. I should be the expert, and I should be getting all these great insights and then going, yep, this is exactly what I'm going to do. But I don't really know. So I worked in the sport of badminton for 6 years at the state level, and then I also worked at the Australian Sports Commission for 5.5 years after that. And a lot of that focus was in sort of governance and capability of sporting organisations. So my PhD, my PhD is actually the focus is on the organisational support. So when I speak about my PhD, people kind of always, their first focus is on the athletes, and that's why I'm talking to the athletes, but I'm talking to the athletes to understand what exactly it is they need from the National Sporting Organisation to help with this transition. So that organisational capacity space that I have actually worked in previously, it's a huge part of my PhD, which is probably something when I went into it I didn't really think that I would have such a huge connection already to, but it is. But then there's obviously this big athlete wellbeing space as well. So I'm not totally, can't tell you, I have my own career plans as yet, unfortunately, even though that's the whole purpose of my PhD.
Well, you're worried about everyone else's
That's
careers.
right, exactly. Happy to talk to everyone else and talk things through with everyone else. But, it's almost like that bit where I just said before how athletes don't want to talk about what they're going to do next. I actually feel like that.
I
honestly feel like that at the moment, where don't ask me what I'm going to be doing in 2 years' time because I don't know.
That's part of the reason that I've probably told this story at every podcast I've recorded so far, but one of the reasons I wanted to do this, if not the main reason, is I really missed doing my PhD. It was, up until my son was born, right after I finished, the happiest time of my life, because you just never get that intellectual freedom again, even within a structured scholarship role like the one you have. You still, as you said, are designing your own experiments, deciding who you're going to interview, what you're going to talk about, what direction that's going to take. You never have that again, even if you stay in academia.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've had another professor actually say that to me. He said, you will never be in this scenario again, so just enjoy it and make the most of it. Even though it might be stressful and go, why am I doing it at this point? But just you'll look back on it and go, yeah, that was really good. That was really beneficial. So,
Yeah. And if you go back into industry, you'll have you'll be very well-rounded. Whether you go into academia and you bring your industry experience with you, which your students will love and value, you'll immediately be their favorite. Because not very many academics, myself included, I had worked in management before, but not sport management specifically. Okay. So I can't bring that kind of real-world experience to what I'm teaching. I just have my anecdotes from the people who I've spoken to through my research, which is valuable, of course, but the questions I asked were very targeted toward my research, not necessarily about what it's like to work within this organization. But that I think if you were to go back into industry, then you also have, as you said, you've now been immersed just at this conference in concepts of well-being, maybe people who are more focused on the athlete rather than the organization. You're in an ecosystem now, an ecosystem of ideas. Yeah. I'm going to trademark that ecosystem of ideas. That'll be the first bumper sticker for the podcast.
Maybe there's the quote, but the quote's from you. Yeah,
I know. It can't be from me.
Yeah.
Can't tease people with my quote. That'd be a very cruel tease because then I barely talk the rest of it. Like, where's the other guy? But yeah, I think you're in a very unique position. I don't think you could go wrong either way. You can truly just follow your heart. Mm-hmm. Which is nice.
Yep, cool. You should be doing my pitch. No. There's the advice bit.
That's right. Well, I mean, as you say, you're looking at that sudden transition. Not everybody gets that. It would be like if the scholarship rug got pulled out from under you and you had to stop the PhD tomorrow.
Yeah. Well,
what would you do?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's kind of, it's almost like being made, like having your position being made redundant. Mm. And I think a lot of people have been through that in the last couple of years. So, you think, yep, everything's going well, and then all of a sudden, no, it's not. Yeah.
And maybe with the added trauma of a horrendous injury and rehabilitation on top of it.
Yeah. So, yeah, exactly. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's very full on.
Yeah. Yes.
On that note, how do you balance? Surely you've heard some heart-wrenching stories in your interviews. How do you kind of keep afloat? And
yeah, that's a really great question. One of the very first interviews I conducted, the interviewee actually gave me advice.
Okay.
Because they had worked in the industry for a very, very long time, and the advice was like, you're going to probably hear some really not great traumatic stories, and that would be, even for you as the person interviewing, like that's a lot. So you need to, look after yourself and things like that. But so don't organise all of the interviews back to back, sort of thing. But even don't organise them so they're all, in the same week and things like that. Mm. Just because, some of the stories are really not nice. Just around what actually happened and the support and things like that, or the support, that they received, or the support that they didn't receive, or the support that they were receptive to, or the support, whether it was the support they needed, or whether the support was on the mark or off the mark, sort of thing. Right. So, that was some advice I was provided with at the very start, as I said.
Did you follow that advice, or?
Yeah, actually, definitely.
It's good advice.
Yeah, it's good advice, but it's also because it's actually been quite difficult to find participants for my project. Mm. And it's not because people don't want to be involved. It's actually because, how do I find these people? So the NSO part, National Sporting Organisation representative, that's fine because we know who they are. We can look up email addresses, that sort of thing. But when it comes to the retired athlete cohort, it's been quite difficult because a lot of the time you don't know the reasons why people have retired from a sport. Sometimes, most of the time they're not published. A lot of times, these athletes are no longer involved with the sport. That's actually been one of the biggest, barriers isn't the right word. It's one of the hardest things is actually been trying to recruit people to be involved, especially in that athlete cohort. Yeah. It's the finding, and also having people be comfortable telling me, who they don't know, their stories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because you're talking about what is maybe the worst chapter of their life.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm also interviewing athletes that have retired from 2014 onwards. So that's
still fresh.
Yeah, especially even going back to 2014, like that's it's in the people that I'm talking to, that's a really it's very close and really fresh in their minds. And a few have said, if you had spoken to me within 3 years of me retiring from my sport, I wouldn't have. No, not if you'd spoken to me. The response was, I wouldn't have spoken to you.
Right.
Because I didn't want to talk about it. Yeah.
And fair enough.
Yeah.
So you are finishing your data collection, you said.
Yep.
Where to from here? Like, what are you looking at in terms of your analysis, and have you thought about what implications this might have in terms of making some meaningful change?
Yeah. Yes. So finish off the interviews this year, which is only a few weeks for the year now. And so then go through all the transcripts and code them. So I'm doing qualitative research, code them, and then, obviously all the research, academic stuff, themes, etc. Every person I've spoken to in the interview stage has said, if you need anything else, make sure you contact me. If something comes up and you want to talk about it more. Also,
that's fantastic, because you don't always get that.
Yeah, and also, please keep me up to date. Keep me updated with your findings as well.
Yeah, interesting.
And that's from both the retired athletes cohort, but also the National Sporting Organisation cohort. So, obviously, I'm not going to provide everyone with an 80,000 word PhD thesis, because why would people, spend their week reading that? It's very interesting, obviously, from academics, but so it'll be obviously translating that into,
digestible
pieces, how people are going to consume that. But also, that's your different audiences there. So you've got athletes, you've got national sporting organisations. So how that's going to be received by different cohorts as well. Sort of probably have to think about that, and how I translate it into ways that people are actually going to go, oh, okay, that's the support that athletes are telling us that they need, So does that answer your question? I can't.
It does answer my question.
Okay.
Yeah. Although I wanted to ask further. So, are you doing your thesis the traditional route, or are you going by compilation? Have you written some journal articles?
No, I'm just doing traditional.
Yeah.
Not just, I shouldn't say use the word just.
Just a boring old 80,000 word book.
No one's going to read it. But I have to summarise it.
You'll read it several times.
Yeah, that's right. Me, supervisors.
And we'll put it on the show notes page.
Yeah,
so,
that's right.
Everyone can come along.
Yes, but hopefully next year, once I've got all my results collected and analysed, hopefully there's some publications that come out.
That might be dictated as well if you decide if you want to go into academia or back into industry.
Yes, that's right. Definitely being encouraged by my supervisors to have some publications. So
it's good value in it either way. But as you say, if you want to translate your findings into actionable advice, I think that you're coming from a place of strength because you do have that industry experience. Are you an athlete yourself?
No, I would not say that I was an elite athlete. I played lots of sports.
Yeah.
And I actually coach 3 sports at this moment. Not at a high level or anything, just community participation level at school. I'm.
But you're in the space. You've got that mindset. You know how athletes think. Maybe you're not coaching elite athletes, but you are speaking to elite athletes, and you can tease out so you can be the translator, from academies to real world, quote unquote, for lack of I just gave every academic an existential crisis because I suggested academia is not the real world. But I think everyone takes my meaning. Yeah. It might be interesting. Have you just been working with cyclists? I might have missed you say this before, or is it athletes from all?
No, range of different sports. So I understand where you're thinking cyclists because of the Amy Gillett Foundation. No, I have interviewed cyclists, but no, I've interviewed people from a range of sports. So that's at both the NSO, National Sporting Organisation level, and retired athletes from a number of sports. So netballers, rowers, tennis players, gymnasts, artistic swimmers, cricketers. There's probably more. I just can't think off the top of my head.
Yeah, sure.
Yep.
But there's an opportunity then for this to have far-reaching impact.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. And that was, the idea of talking to people from different sports. So obviously all sports have their own nuances, but a lot of the stories that I'm hearing from the athletes, a lot of similarities.
Sure.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, that's not... hadn't heard the story of Amy Gillett before. That happened before I moved to Australia.
Yeah, it was 2005.
That wasn't on my radar. So that's quite shocking.
So just with that, so the night before that crash happened in Germany, Amy had emailed. She wanted to do a PhD herself.
All right.
Yep. So she had just finished her honours. Was training with the Australian road cycling team, and the night before that the crash happened, she had emailed her potential supervisor saying, "Yep, I've got this idea. I know what I want to do. It's going to be around women and girls in sport." So it's actually something that the Amy Gillett Foundation has wanted this research to be conducted for quite a while.
Carry out that legacy.
Yes, that's exactly the word. It's the legacy. So it's actually... Yeah, the legacy for this project that I'm doing is because that's the story, how Amy wanted to complete a PhD and just the timing, just the night before that the email was sent, but then also her teammates that, experienced.
They were also,
Yeah.
Well, what does that influence you or impact you at all in undertaking this study? Because you've just given me chills a little bit. It's very powerful.
Yes, yeah, that's exactly right. Because, it's especially at times where you go, you're stuck in writing, or you get stuck at a part and you just need some advice or something. And you go, no, there's a real need for this research, and then there is that story and the legacy around why this research is being conducted and why, it's being funded as well. So, and sometimes, I don't know what I'm going with that.
Well, you answered the question. All good. Yeah, it's very impactful and powerful stuff, and that's where, as you say, in the darkest moments of the PhD, and anyone listening who's done or is doing a PhD knows what we're referring to.
Yeah.
That if you have that, you're almost carrying the torch in a way, and you don't want to be the one to let the flame go out. You want to keep them moving forward.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So there's that. I don't even think the word motivation is the right word to describe it, but it's just there's a really big reason why this is being undertaken and why I'm doing it.
Almost a responsibility.
Yeah, that's probably a better word than motivation.
Did that enter into you choosing to do this particular project, or did that all come along later?
Elements of it, I probably didn't actually understand. Like I didn't know about the email the night before until later on, later down the track in the process of getting the PhD underway and things.
Yeah.
But I've been in sport involved in sport for a long time, so I did know Amy Gillett and I knew the story. Yes and no, but I didn't know more of the whole depth.
Story.
Yeah, I didn't know that, and I don't think many people would have known that story, because Murray Drummond actually told me that story, so he was going to be her supervisor for her PhD.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
There you have it. Well, now hopefully a few people listen to this that don't know that, and because it's a very powerful thing.
Yes, and actually it was also mentioned on the Tour de France coverage this year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
I can't remember the date.
Oh, that's all right.
Yeah, so a couple of commentators, were talking about the research as well.
Yeah.
And the reason why this specific topic was decided upon for this PhD scholarship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, that's sort of like stopped me in my tracks. That's how. But I will move on.
Yeah.
We are at this conference that we've referred to, and you've kind of mentioned about some presentations that you've seen. But it's the last day now. We're recording here at the end of the last day.
Mm-hmm.
And you said earlier before we started recording, this is your first in-person conference.
Yes.
So how's your experience been, and how has it compared to the online conference that you went to last year? What are your thoughts?
Oh, yeah, it's been great. I've sort of been to lots of conferences, but not a SMANS conference, not an academic conference as such. And we were talking about this earlier, I'm quite an extroverted person. I do like talking to people and finding things out. I don't actually mind online conferences, to be honest with you. There's certainly elements of online conferences that I like. You know, you don't have to take days off work or say that I can't work for I have about 5 part-time jobs to travel, but obviously, so, you know, I like traveling as well. So, but also online you can, you know, pick and choose a bit more the things that you're like, yes, I've definitely got to do this. But the other thing is, if you're at home at an online conference, there's all these other things that can sort of, someone knocks on the door or something else happens and all of a sudden something else takes a priority as opposed to watching someone's presentation. Whereas when you're at, you know, face-to-face conference, well, I'm here, I'm invested now, so I'm going to make
doing
the most.
The thing.
Yes, that's right. So you know, there's nothing's going to come and distract me. Yeah.
Just some dork who asks you to come do a podcast recording.
That's right. No, it's fine. So I'm either or. I like both.
Yeah, okay.
Online,
as you say, it's flexible. If I really wish we would keep at least a hybrid model, if not all of the presentations, at least have a room where you could opt into doing a hybrid presentation. Because even before the pandemic, it's not like getting from, say, New York to Australia is easy.
Yeah, that's right.
And we've talked about all the benefits of a conference where you get the inside goss on research that people are doing, and maybe you're even seeing some preliminary findings that don't make it into final publications, and there's a lot of value in that, I think.
And I think the other thing is, there's been a few presentations I've gone into that if I wasn't here and I wouldn't have watched them online because I would have found something else to do, but because I'm here and because it's in between something else, then I would never have actually watched that or thought about that, and it's been really
eye-opening, right?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Even if it's not related to your specific area of study, it's still cool to see like what other people were passionate about. And
actually I went to the HDR, the student conference on the Gold Coast in July, and it was also hosted with this other group, which was more hospitality. Ended up going to all these other hospitality PhDs.
Yeah.
And
quite different, isn't it?
Oh, so interesting.
Yeah.
So, which, you know, we're sport management and that's what we love, and that's really cool. But it was really interesting in July to go and, you know, listen to all these, like, there's words in it, commensality, like I haven't
heard of that either.
It's about eating together. So someone's doing their PhD on people coming together and eating their meals.
See, where was my invite to participate in that study? Because that sounds awesome. Yes. I want to sit down and eat.
And someone's spending their time, 3-4 years doing their PhD, researching that. So that's one of the lots of benefits to a face-to-face conference, but sometimes you go, just off the title, you wouldn't normally go into anything. Because I'd be like, I don't even know what is the commensality? I don't even know what that word is. So why would I go and watch a presentation? But then it was like,
Yeah.
oh, this is amazing. And
Yeah.
I was asking questions. Like, I'm not a prolific question asker in that scenario. But I was like, oh, this is something I didn't even know was a thing.
Yeah. And now you've come home, and whenever you're going to sit down with some friends and have dinner, you're like, let's all engage in some commensality. And they say, what?
And I bring it up all of the time.
I would too.
Yeah. Okay. And I was going to say this conference one day, and this thing that I learnt. I thought I was going for sport, but it wasn't.
Yeah. That's a nice blend of because they do have the hospitality and the tourism and the sport all in one.
Yeah.
It's quite an interesting little melting pot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. So, yeah, it was a good, both conferences have been great. So, yeah. That was an in-person one as well. There was no online option for the student conference in July.
Yeah, got you. On the note of conferences then, looking ahead, is there anything on the radar for you, any other conferences that you have your eye on maybe attending? We sort of talked about publications, but are you looking at that, getting anything out there in whatever medium?
Well, so definitely SMANS 2023 I will be presenting because I'll have all my results collected, analysed, ready to get it out there. So that'll be obviously in a year's time, so it'll be in Canberra. We probably haven't spoken about that with my supervisors in such detail at the moment. Also, I live in Brisbane, but I'm at Victoria University. So all of my PhD has actually been online. Like
remote, yeah.
Literally all of it.
Yeah.
I've only met my supervisors in person twice.
Right.
It was this year, and once was
right outside.
Yeah. Yeah. We had breakfast the other day, yesterday, before the conference started. So I've been... There's that anything you wanted to bring up thing? Here it is. Yeah, I've been doing... my whole PhD, because obviously I started in 2020, and I'm at a university that's based in Melbourne.
Yeah.
So
was there any talk about maybe moving to Melbourne, or you were happy to...
In 2020, definitely not, because...
Lockdowns here were pretty intense.
Yeah. So, and like the universities in Melbourne especially, they had to very, very quickly transition into online delivery of courses and lectures and tutorials and things. But then as we progressed, I did actually have this conversation with my supervisors, and it was, well, you don't need to live here to do your PhD, because all of my interviews have been conducted online.
Right.
Yeah, so, and everything, especially Victoria University, basically everything is delivered online as well. So we did our coursework online, so we had to do 2 subjects at the very beginning. So we had to do an ethics and integrity subject and a conceptualising and contextualising research subject. And we were in the very first PhD candidate cohort that were allowed to do that online.
Oh, okay.
And allowed meaning had to be done online, because it was August 2020, sorry. When that happened, that was the only way that they could continue to deliver university courses. So it was like, well, there's literally everything is online. So there's no, I could do this.
Even
anywhere.
if you came to Melbourne.
I'd be doing, exactly.
Wouldn't be anybody around.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'd still be sitting in house, apartment, whatever, on the computer doing
wild.
Zoom. And that's actually, it's interesting because in all the milestones you do for your PhD, there's always been a question around how has COVID impacted your PhD. And you read that question, you think, oh, that's a negative kind of connotation. But first of all, I probably wouldn't have started it at that time if it wasn't for COVID, because, as I said, I was overseas at the time and had to come back very quickly. I think I had 4 days' notice to come back, thinking I was going to be overseas for a lot longer. So first of all, how COVID has impacted my PhD is, I started it.
You did it.
Yeah, that's right. And then once you're in it, there was no there was no, because I said, there was no sport jobs at the time. There was nothing to kind of...
It's still been slow to come back, even now 2 years on.
Yeah, so you kind of keep going, oh, okay, yep, kind of really good time to do it, to get it done.
Yeah.
But also it meant things like interviews and coursework and things, because everyone had to do it online on Zoom. I use Zoom for everything. Because I feel like before then, people had tried to do things online on Zoom and remote meetings and things like that. And I just feel like the uptake was never...
Yeah.
People didn't like it.
Yeah.
And
now everyone's just tired of it.
Yeah, that's right. And I remember leaving meetings with heaps of people, like Zoom meetings, and it just was a disaster because you'd get, people couldn't hear anyone, and no one knew how to use no one knew what button to press.
You're on mute.
Yeah. We didn't know how to get it started. People hadn't downloaded the Zoom software stuff, but because of COVID, everyone had to learn how to...
We're all experts now.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's right.
How do I share screen? Well, you go here.
Yeah.
So it's actually meant that, it was just from the outset of my PhD, it was all my interviews we're just going to do them online. Don't even, because you can get them recorded. Literally the person that I'm interviewing and myself only need to, schedule in 45 minutes to an hour because there's no travelling time. There's no cost involved because no one's, even if it was locally within, close to where I live, there was no, parking or... fuel costs or anything like that. So, yeah, it's actually been really, really streamlined process because the whole thing is online.
Yeah. And even if you came out the other side, as you say, because there's a couple people in my life who I sort of said, look, if you ever thought about doing a PhD, now's the time, because especially if you can get a scholarship, and then any teaching that you do on top is just icing on the cake in terms of income.
Yeah.
And you're guaranteed for the 3 years or whatever it is. And that, maybe now we are coming on to the end of the third year of the pandemic, but there are worse places to hide during a pandemic than, especially if you can do it entirely online and be safe and all of that. Yeah. What a fantastic outcome. As you say, for you, it's been a fantastic opportunity.
Yeah, exactly. And because I'm not, I'm a qualitative researcher, so I'm not in a laboratory or anything like that. So I never had any of those kind of barriers or anything like that. So because I've spoken to other PhD students and they've had real issues because, they couldn't go into the university to the lab.
Yeah.
Or I remember speaking with someone that was doing something around, road safety and trains, and it was about people commuting to the city.
Oh no.
But obviously they couldn't
everybody stopped.
They're in Melbourne and no one was allowed to commute into the city. Out. So when I listen to those sort of stories, I go, oh no, I don't like that question that kept coming up around how has COVID impacted your research. It's like I've had to reschedule some interviews because someone's been unwell. That's
yeah, that's right.
Okay, we'll do it next week. That was literally my response. Yeah.
I mean, you can't ask for a better outcome in terms of that particular question.
Yeah, that's
right. Well, look, let's tie a bow on this. Thank you very much for this chat. And it's been nice. We've had a lot of offline chats, actually, in the preceding days to recording this. In fact, we were having such a good chat before we started recording that we had to stop so that we could save some of it for the podcast. And we're like, why are we doing this without the microphones on?
And compose ourselves.
And compose ourselves. Yes, we did have a bit of a laughing fit before we began. The last question that I ask everybody is, could you tell us about something in your life that's not related to your PhD that you're excited about at the moment?
Okay, all right. Not related to my PhD that I'm excited about. So I think I mentioned earlier I have about five part-time jobs. So I'm excited because I do lots of casual work. I'm excited next, December, January. I don't really need to do those because a lot of those are out of school. So I coach badminton, I coach netball. And I also work in the boarding house at one of the girls' schools in Brisbane. So obviously school's out at the moment. So I've got 8 or 9 weeks before I need to pick any of that up again. I've also started doing swim teaching as well. So I've done a lot this year.
Sounds like it.
Yeah. So I'm going to have a little bit of a break,
Yeah.
but I'm still going to actually, I know the question was what are you excited about? Not PhD. I'm actually excited next couple of weeks I can...
Nothing but the PhD.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, totally didn't answer that the way you wanted me to answer.
There's a way to frame it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you're right. It's especially if you're trying to, generate an income. We all have to pay the rent, so sometimes the PhD can fall to the back burner, and then you look up and it's a month later, and you think, oh, geez, I really need to get back into this. So you can almost feel like the PhD is your safe place. You retreat back into it.
Yeah, yeah. The work I do, especially the coaching work, I just like doing it as opposed to any other financial.
But it takes time and energy and...
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But I love the... I don't know. I really like doing those things, and and also because doing a PhD can be a very isolating experience. Mm-hmm. And also, as we were just talking about, I'm doing it remote, online. Mm-hmm. Like literally everything's online. So I need to do those other things, just also to stay connected.
Yeah.
I don't want to say the outside world because it's not like that, but just also just to stay connected with the industry as well, especially the sports side of it.
Yeah.
Because that was actually one of the things I was a little bit worried about when I was starting. My PhD was, I'm going to be out of the industry for 4 years, and how's that going to be? Like,
will it leave me behind?
Yeah, exactly. From the industry side, not the academic side. I did think about that a lot at the time. But then I did, once sport and everything kept coming back, and as I said, I was from Brisbane, so it wasn't as like lockdowns and things weren't like in other places.
Not as dramatic.
And I think in Brisbane, as opposed to the first one, I can't even remember the first March when it happened. Mm-hmm. I think we only had 10 days lockdown.
Right.
So it's not. So sport came back a lot quicker at that community level in Brisbane anyway. So I did remember thinking, I'll start. I'll stay connected by the coaching and things that I do.
Yeah, nice. Because that was one of the things that we were speaking about before we recorded today. Was you were saying. You have that kind of extroverted energy, and you were saying sometimes you have a hard time sleeping if you haven't connected with someone that day.
Yes. Yeah. So we were talking about extroverted and introverted. I'm definitely an extrovert, but as I was saying, I'm going to get up on stage and sing you a song or anything. That's not going to happen.
It's not that kind of podcast.
No.
No. You're off the hook.
That's right. I wouldn't have answered your tweet otherwise.
And you were the first one. I don't know if you realise that.
Well, there's a Twitter. I get to answer things on Twitter, and that's how I ended up doing the PhD.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
and the opportunities, you've taken them.
Yes, that's exactly right. Not a very traditional way of entering a PhD program, but we've all got our own stories. So I'm definitely...
She wouldn't have tweeted it if she didn't want to find somebody that way, so...
But you know how I was also always connected back to your PhD work? You know how I was saying one of the hardest things has been finding participants? Mm-hmm. The best way to find, is just... I had to start joining into all these Facebook groups that I would never have been a member of.
Right.
Sport-specific groups... retired athlete groups, etc., and hope I got accepted. And then start posting stuff in there and asking other people that I knew, is there any way you could put this that potentially I would be able to get some participants? So that social media side has actually been really great in the recruitment
and will be a valuable way for you, as you were saying. Everybody wants to know about your findings.
Yeah.
For you to communicate all of that back to them. Yes,
that's exactly right. And I had a similar conversation with one of my supervisors as well about that. Sometimes I feel like I put the information out there, but nothing, I didn't get any responses, or, people were liking it and they were making comments and things, but I wasn't getting any actual participants. And the response was, but that's part of, that helps you in being able to...
Yeah, it's a numbers game.
Yeah, that's right. And people now know that the research is being conducted, and they'll potentially be interested to see what the findings are. Even if, it's pretty strict criteria that I'm looking for my participants. Not strict as in you can't be involved, but
but the qualifying criteria.
Yes. So, I can't quite remember where I was going with that, but that social media side, but also the extroverted thing. Yes. So I am definitely a people person. I can chat with anyone, anywhere. But I do. That isolating part of doing a PhD online, remote. If I didn't do those other pieces that I said, the coaching and working in the boarding house, and I do some research as well, research projects for the university. For me personally, I need that. Otherwise, I don't think I would sleep, and then I think, I don't know.
You don't want to know.
No, that's right. That's why I keep doing the other bits. Even though I'm like, I'm looking forward to a break. Give me about 2 weeks and I'll be bored again, going,
right.
What am I going to do now? I'll be talking everyone's ear off.
Well, tonight we have the closing dinner.
Yes.
Lots of social opportunities, and you have your homework from me to try to make left eye contact with people. So if we do another episode of this at a future Spans, you can report back to listeners.
That's another research project then.
That's right. There's a whole PhD in that.
That's observational method.
That's right.
I hope people take it the right way, though.
They won't. They won't even know what.
No, that's right. Maybe we could present that at the next.
Yeah, that's right.
Got nothing to do with sport.
Or in a room full of sport academics, does it have everything to do with sport? Could be.
Oh yeah, maybe.
Stay tuned.
Yeah, that's some really interesting research coming out about
eye contact.
Yeah.
Okay.
You better tweet that so that everyone knows.
No, I'm just going to let you do it.
No, okay. No, that's true, because everyone knows I'm doing it. Yep. Okay.
All right. We'll stop there. Ashleigh, thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you.